Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this Leading During Times of Change session. We're going to be focused on how do you lead when there's change or ambiguity in your environment. And it should be a very participatory, active session, so I'm looking forward to that. So the first thing I want you to do is all of you stand up and pick a partner. I will send this video. This is a super cool video. Basically, Volkswagen did an experiment and they were trying to change behavior. And instead of doing something punishing, they did something which is fun. I think it's in Sweden, where cars are videotaped, and if they're going the speed limit, they get entered into a lottery. And if you're speeding, you have to pay a fine. And all the money that goes to the fine goes into the lottery pool, and the people who are speeding the right speed entered in and could win the money.
Love it.
And it dropped speeding significantly, and it was super fun. And so the point is, how do you make change fun? How do you use positive rewards? I think we're always like, you don't take Gmail, you're in trouble, as opposed to how do we make something really positive? So that's what that video would say. So what I'd like you to do is, for the last 3 minutes, so this is really quick, but maybe in a small group of 4, 4, and 5, just talk about the things we just discussed and pick one change you might be going through and how you might use some of these tools in them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how you might use the SCARF model, how might you use fun and positivity, and that question is in your participant handbook. And we really are just going to spend like 2 minutes on that. And the last page is a feedback survey.
All my it's not time to probably
Okay with me? Stop it.
You gonna jump in?
All right. So if we had a whole day, we would do a lot more of this. We would do some role playing. But it's a good conversation to have, and maybe you can do this on your own as well, kind of even cross-functional teams talk about how you want to manage change. Any great ideas that came out of the groups that you want to just share really quick before we wrap up?
I think it was a lot of what you said about just people's feelings and kind of keeping that into perspective, as we have a coaching program as well. And so we're kind of talking about just like, how are you feeling about this? Like actually hearing them, and that whole process is important. So if they're not on board with it, then they're not gonna, to be a part of the process anyway.
Yeah, great, thank you.
I think that I mentioned, sometimes we just don't have time for change. We're so busy doing so many different things. And I think that's one thing that wasn't really mentioned. I mean, there's change that's happening, but you've got all these other responsibilities as well. So if there's not enough time in the day, then I believe that's where the fatigue factor comes into the next step. So I believe it's do I have time for change? Mm-hmm. And if you're so busy, when do you have time for that change to actually learn whatever needs to be done? And then when and sometimes you only learn half of it, and then you're trying to adjust with everything else. I think it's time, in my opinion.
Any ideas of how to address it? Because that's absolutely true here. Any ideas about that when you're leading?
I would think it's like time management. It's like maybe it's you have to do. So I understand where he's coming from, but like maybe you have to come in a little bit earlier to knock out some of the stuff that's maybe not like your core content or revenue impacting, and then offloading things that you don't have to do onto like your senior reps. That way you don't feel so bogged down. I think that would help.
And sometimes it is advocating. Like the people who are making the decisions about the change may not be living your team's life, and they may not know. So maybe talking about like this is how many hours of the day, and pushing back. Not saying that that'll always work, but as that's part of your role as a leader, as an advocate. And so the people designing the change are not always aware fully of the implications, and they don't always know truly the feelings. So that can be your job to feed that back to the team that's leading the change and really explain. And they may listen, they may not, but at least that helps you have some autonomy in the process.
So at my last job, we actually did like time and motion studies. So that was like always effective in terms of like you'd pass out this sheet and you'd literally like would time every single thing that you did in a day. Now like we hated doing it, but you had an opinion on like if you're having to have extra tasks brought on you, or if they're wanting X amount of things from you, you'd say, this is how much time it takes me to actually do what I'm currently doing in a day. Where does that fit into place, and then what changes can be made? So that was always helpful.
All right, so I appreciate your time. Any just final tips? I'll send this deck out to you if you want it. There's like sort of the key tips for change. Key takeaway. Something you'll do, either a key takeaway or something you'll do differently.
Taking into account their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do a better job of taking into account their feelings.
Yeah. And if it was purely inefficient, I'd say don't do it. It's the fact is that it's, in the end, it's going to save you time.
And, you know, in business, you hear, you know, don't run your business on emotion. You know, make a business decision, but you know, it's people. You got to make sure their emotions are in place.
I've seen mutinies. I've seen change rolled out where nobody will do the change. Like if you don't get that buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. All right. Well, thank you for your time. What you're going to do is you're going to pick a behavior or something you want to change in your life. It could be something that's come out of the past day and a half, or it could be I want to go on a diet, or I want to increase my network, or whatever it is. Anything you want to change in your life. One question. And then we're going to get up, and the goal is to talk to as many people as possible. And there are certain rules of how the conversation goes. So I say to you, I want to get more fit. You don't say back to me, yeah, you are pretty unfit. I'm glad you mentioned that. Or, you know, I want to learn how to listen better. Yeah, you're not that good. Your only suggestions are forward thinking, and this is more important if you're intact team. So you're not giving any feedback, you're only giving feed forward. And you make a suggestion of something that you have done or you've heard of that might help. Or a connection, like, oh, you know, you should talk to Bob Smith. Here's Bob Smith's phone number. But something I think we haven't talked much about is how the practices tie to each other. So if you're a strong challenge the process person, but you don't inspire a vision, how effective will you be? Will there be challenges in getting things done? Same thing with enable others to act. You challenge. I mean, so, you know, challenging without inspiring, challenging without enabling is just annoying. And I say that as somebody who is prone for challenging.